crazy how many teams had a chance to win. The Ripper GC went from 9 back to leading by 2 to near the cellar again late in the day. It was so volatile, counting 4 scores. It was pretty nuts, but you know, the cliques have been cellar dwellers for basically 2.5 seasons, and they come out victorious today. That's awesome.
It'll be the summer of the cliques, definitely. So, like I said, there's definitely more to come from us.
It was a magnificent ball striking performance.
Yeah, you know, I got to speak to someone in his camp before he teed off this morning, and they said to me that he is finally feeling extremely comfortable out here. He's not thinking about any swing thought. He's going out there, he's swinging so freely, and it certainly showed today. The way he drove the ball, the way he hit his irons, and even in his putting as well.
Yeah, and lives in Texas, went to school in Texas. His tour win on the PGA Tour was here in Houston, which is Texas, and now his first live win, Texas.
Honestly, it was just a matter of playing solid coming down the stretch. I think there was a switch there on 15 that I made birdie, he made bogey, and I just knew that I had to power in pretty much, and it was mine. The 18 I made bogey, but it worked. He played unbelievable, and he put pressure all the way to the end, and it was a good battle. I love playing here. Obviously, Texas treats me well. It's my adopted home state, so I'm just happy to get it done again in Houston.
Welcome to hour number 2, live right here on the early line on SportsGrid and all across the SportsGrid network. He is Donnie Rightside. I am Ben Stevens. It is Thursday, June 20th. Exactly 1 week from today, the opening round of the 2024 NBA draft will already be in the books. That means night number 2, now as the NBA has expanded its draft to a 2-night television event, will be just about to get underway. And will a certain player's name still be on the board and available? That's Bronny James. Is he going to be a first-round pick? Might he stick around to night number 2? That's where we start our discussion here, DRS, in this second hour.
Yeah, and it is an interesting discussion because it's going to start to ramp up now that we're about a week away from the NBA draft. It's always been a hot topic, but the reason why we're not getting it on that front burner is the draft overall is very underwhelming, so you're sort of picking and choosing. If this was a loaded draft, it would be a nice little caveat, but who's going to be 1, who's going to be 2, who's going to be 3, it's not as interesting as it was maybe for the past 10 or 15 years. Drafts sometimes go in cycles here, but I'm excited to hear some of those opportunities where LeBron James' son can actually go, and will he be with him? And I want to say this one thing. Like, we'll get to Bronny James, but the fact now that it's starting to come out where LeBron James is saying on the record behind the scenes, I don't care who drafts him, he can play wherever he wants, and it doesn't matter if it's with me. Come on now, man. Do anybody believe that?
For the last decade, LeBron James has reiterated his desire pretty much each and every year as he approached 30 and beyond that he was going to stick around as long as he could in the NBA to take care of his body, to have that longevity in his career, to play or at least have the opportunity to play with his son. That opportunity is now. If it feels like we are focusing on Bronny James because of how relatively weak this draft class is in 2024 at the top of the selections comparatively to years past, like last year with the sweepstakes for Victor Wembanyama and his coronation as the number 1 overall pick, it does mean that Bronny James now becomes a major topic in storyline, in talking point, especially because of the ramifications for one of the greatest players in the history of the association in LeBron James. Rich Paul, who is LeBron's agent and now represents Bronny, of course, as well, had this to say about the pre-draft process for Bronny James. Quote, Bronny is the same as my previous clients. I got the word out early to teams that if you plan on bringing Bronny in, here's what you need to know. I thought we had these quotes. Maybe we do not. If you won't give him a real deal, there's nothing to talk about. It's hard to get real development on a two-way deal. I don't care about him going to the Lakers or Phoenix or about what number he gets picked.
crazy how many teams had a chance to win. The Ripper GC went from 9 back to leading by 2 to near the cellar again late in the day. It was so volatile, counting 4 scores. It was pretty nuts, but you know, the cliques have been cellar dwellers for basically 2.5 seasons, and they come out victorious today. That's awesome.
It'll be the summer of the cliques, definitely. So, like I said, there's definitely more to come from us.
It was a magnificent ball striking performance.
Yeah, you know, I got to speak to someone in his camp before he teed off this morning, and they said to me that he is finally feeling extremely comfortable out here. He's not thinking about any swing thought. He's going out there, he's swinging so freely, and it certainly showed today. The way he drove the ball, the way he hit his irons, and even in his putting as well.
Yeah, and lives in Texas, went to school in Texas. His tour win on the PGA Tour was here in Houston, which is Texas, and now his first live win, Texas.
Honestly, it was just a matter of playing solid coming down the stretch. I think there was a good switch there on 15 that I made birdie, he made bogey, and I just knew that I had.
Did you miss us? Because we are back live right here on the early line on this Thursday on SportsGrid. He's Donnie, I am Ben. We apologize for the technical difficulties that had us go to commercial break much earlier than anticipated. Donnie, we're talking about Bronny James. Maybe the SportsGrid powers that be don't want us discussing Bronny James, but we plow on. I was sharing what his agent, Rich Paul, was saying about him. And we'll finish with this quote. If Bronny's name was Charles Jacobson and he was my client, I would do the same thing. Identify teams that have real interest. And that's really the conversation around Bronny James, at least from the narrative perspective. The production or lack thereof in his only year of college hoops at USC. And if his name was different, would there be this much notoriety? I still believe in the prospect that is Bronny James, at least being able to contribute at the professional level in the NBA, but I do understand the skepticism at the same time.
It's interesting because we'll never know, right? That's the always thing. There's always going to be a debate on, well, if he wasn't this guy, but if we're just being honest with ourselves, is Bronny James an NBA player? Technically, we don't know, but he's going to be drafted, but I guess you can say yes. But if it wasn't Bronny James, the level of hype coming out of high school wouldn't have been there for him at that point. Still a solid prospect, yes. But then you go and play 1 year of college basketball, and you're basically insignificant on your roster. And it's a team that does have some NBA prospects, but on the landscape, it's like, hey, man, he was on one of the best Kentucky teams we've ever seen. He only got limited minutes because they had 6 number 1 draft picks ahead of him, and they were unbeaten throughout the season. If he stayed in year number 2, he would shine. No, we're never going to know if Bronny stayed at year number 2 at USC, how good he actually will be because he's turning pro. But the one thing I think we can agree upon, the spotlight is there because of the name. If he did not have that name, I don't think Rich Paul would even be his client at this point because it wouldn't be worth it. Hey, I'm going to pick a guy up here for a second round and I'm going to try to force teams into giving him a guaranteed contract as opposed to a 2-way contract. The only reason why we're talking about this is because Rich Paul is taking him on and it's LeBron James' son. So we can be honest with that equation. Will he turn out to be a great NBA player? We don't know. Will he turn out to even be an NBA player? We don't know yet. You're going to go through the process. Way better talented players than Bronny James have failed right away in the NBA. I'm not saying that's going to happen to him, but there's a lot of open-ended questions we need to ask. And you getting through those quotes there from Rich Paul, there's a little bit of salt in there saying, you know what, if this was just anybody, I'd treat him the same way. No, you wouldn't. You wouldn't treat him at all because you wouldn't have him as a client.
Probably the case, right? The notable attention that has been paid to Bronny James and the burden on this young man for having to carry that weight of the expectation for him to be judged at the level that his father is. And Bronny James has spoken himself throughout this pre-draft process in getting ready to take the next step to the NBA about people learning about Bronny, about people learning about his game, not just because of his name, but it's that catch-22, right? The vicious cycle of his name being the reason the eyeballs are there. Let's show his college stats because, again, I do want to make this point. You're going to see this a lot in the next week, the production or lack thereof of what Bronny James was able to accomplish at Southern Cal. It was a short freshman campaign given the medical condition and the cardiac arrest that he suffered last summer during summer workouts with the Trojans basketball program. Averaged less than 5 points per game, less than 3 boards, just about 2 dimes, less than 20 minutes played. It is not a direct correlation, success in college basketball to success in the NBA. Often, the way things that have worked in the one-and-done era, the staples of college hoops, the guys in the running for first-team All-American or first-team All-Conference at the high major level, or the guys in the running for the National Player of the Year award, are not the ones that are being considered to go 1 overall in the top 5, even lottery selections. It is a different format. It is a different style and flow of the game in college as the game in the association. So just because Bronny James's stats were not great, the numbers alone, not just the name, the numbers alone were not great in college hoops, does not mean that he can't project to a successful NBA player. Is he going to be a multiple-time All-Star? Probably not. Can he be on a roster? Certainly so.
Yes, and also he is going to get the edge. And I don't think there's really box office appeal for Bronny James, right? Otherwise, we'd have seen him on ESPN every single night and being a superstar, and it's LeBron James's kid. But having said that, he is going to get the benefit of the doubt over many players. Like, if you are looking at crafting your basketball team, you say, these two guys are similar in what they can do. Bronny James is going to be kept over that other guy that they're even with just because of that last name and the legacy and known just having those eyeballs on your team if you figure that they're going to be there. Now, the interesting part is going to be how it plays out because we're all talking about the same things. And yes, LeBron James for a long time, it's my dream. The only reason why I'm playing right now outside of the money and the fame is I would love to play with my son on the same team. But also, let's get this caught up from the son. Sure, he would love to play with his dad, but also from a team perspective. You're on the road. There's ladies of the night on the road, and, you guys are going out to the bars. Like, your dad's going to be on the same team, right? Like, what are we doing? You spying on dad, dad's spying on you? Like, sometimes you just want to be away from, hey, I'm in the NBA with my dad, but he's not seeing me on a day-to-day basis and knocking on my door at 3 a.m. Hey, son, is trying to get some sleep in here. You know what I mean? So there is something about that independence you would like if you're Bronny James.
You would think a 19-year-old would want to be distant from his parents as he gets to experience life at the professional level. The Lakers are the favorites to select Bronny James at plus 125. The Phoenix Suns have that second shortest number at plus 550. Again, part of this conversation is LeBron's long-standing desire, regardless of what he says now through back channels, of playing alongside Bronny. The idea of alluring LeBron James to play in your franchise as well is enticing. The Lakers, because of the Pelicans, deferring their final pick from the Anthony Davis trade, now draft 17th overall. Phoenix 22nd overall in the first round. Is Bronny James going to be a first-round selection? Well, the odds makers don't seem to believe so. 40.5 is his draft position prop over-under. 40.5 in the over has the juice. That's deep into the second round. The Lakers have 1 pick in the second round. It's 55th overall, the fourth to last pick of the 2024 NBA draft. So maybe some maneuvering on draft night or draft night number 2 exactly a week from today, but all play into the part and the decision to perhaps select Bronny James. More on the early line comes your way next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR listed zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Rory Mack, it's going to be remembered. It will be a lasting image from the 2024 United States Open, just like Bryson DeChambeau's 55-yard bunker shot.
We love big-time winners. Like, you win a championship, we want to hear from you. You get the stage. Sometimes it's emotional. It's a great watch. We also love the losers who said, you know what, I just can't believe I folded down the stretch. Let me face the music here. You sort of get a new light there.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
A historic day, a monumental Thursday in Major League Baseball. A 9-game slate where 7 of the 9 are in the early afternoon hours, and we have 2 in prime time. 1 late night out in Anaheim, or San Diego, between the Brewers and the Padres. But the game really in prime time is at Rickwood Field in Birmingham, Alabama, as we pay celebration not only to the life of Willie Mays, but to the Negro Leagues as well, with a focus on its place and its history in America's pastime. Rickwood Field is the setting for a matchup today between the Giants and the Cardinals. Of course, Willie Mays played the majority of his career with this Giants organization. We'll talk about the Say Hey Kid in just a moment. But first, a focus on Rickwood Field that has been renovated. It is the oldest professional ballpark in all of the United States, founded way back in 1910, and they started playing games on the diamond at Rickwood back in 1910. It was the home ballpark of the Birmingham Black Barons of the Negro Leagues from 1924 to 1960. That's where Willie Mays, the Alabama native, began his professional baseball career, playing for the Black Barons DRS in Birmingham at the tender age of 17 years old back in 1948. So it's a celebration today of America's pastime in the true picture of America's pastime at Rickwood Field.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting about this, too, because there's a lot of history behind it. And again, for me, I love old ballparks. This is right up my alley because the history that goes into it, who actually played there at that time. And I was watching a little bit of the groundskeepers there behind the scenes, like fixing the stadium, basically saying, like, this is hallowed ground here. Do you understand how many superstar players have been here? And not only from the likes of Willie Mays, like the barnstorming tours here that you take a look at. Babe Ruth was through that field. Every legendary player after legendary player after legendary player. And the fact that they were able to fix this up. And also, there is a charm to Major League Baseball returning to its roots and going outside of the mega stadiums, 50, 60, 70,000. We see it in the Field of Dreams game, which I think is a wonderful backdrop. Every year, the Little League game where the Major League Baseball players come to Williamsport and play in that single A stadium. I love to see the bigness of Major League Baseball placed in a field that they're not supposed to be at, but still reliving back those memories. I think we're going to get a pretty interesting game all the way around. And the fun part about this as well, when the telecast comes on, they're, of course, going to tell you about the history of Rickwood Field, but those little stories and the players that they're probably going to interview that played in that stadium way back in the day all the way through, it's almost like a history lesson on file for us that you can watch in real time. And also keep in mind, the bigness of this event, like we were hoping Willie Mays was going to be there, but maybe an ominous sign a couple days before he's not going to make that trip, because essentially this is the Willie Mays game, the Willie Mays Classic here.
Yeah.
The fact that he passed away, the emotion that's going to be on hand tonight for this baseball game, outside of the two teams playing, it's going to be spectacular to watch. And quite frankly, baseball did this right. Don't stack a lot of night games up here. Let this game be the jewel of the night, and everybody will watch and enjoy it.
It's the Cardinals and the Giants. We'll get to the game breakdown in just a moment. The logistics, by the way, these two teams face off today at Rickwood Field, a day off on a Friday before the two clubs venture to finish out their three-game weekend set with two games in St. Louis on both Saturday and Sunday afternoon. But you called it the Willie Mays game. And frankly, it is. 22 of his 24 professional seasons played in this Giants organization, but started his pro career as a Birmingham Black Baron in the Negro Leagues back in 1948. Spent a couple of seasons there before joining the Giants in 1951. Willie Mays, the Say Hey Kid, who passed away, sadly, a few nights ago, peacefully at the age of 93 years old. His team released a statement earlier this week that he would be unable to make the venture to Rickwood Field for this game. And although it will be with profound sadness to lose one of the icons of this sport, who is an Alabama native and started his career at Rickwood Field, it will also be a celebration, and an illustrious one at that, for the Say Hey Kid. 660 home runs, fifth most all-time in MLB history. A 24-time All-Star that had Ted Williams once said about Willie Mays, Major League Baseball started the All-Star game really as a coronation to Mays. He is a two-time MVP. He is a 1954 World Series champion. And anytime, Donnie, as we discussed yesterday, you're an icon who can be remembered by one singular moment, the catch, that's how you know your memory lives on.
And I love this, too. Did you see how many times he made an all-star team? He's also considered maybe the best single baseball player in the history of the sport. I love that it's not overshadowed by, like, well, he only won one championship and all those. Well, who's better? This guy had 5, man. This guy was great. It's a field of 9 out there. He was tremendous. And what a celebration we're going to have tonight.
Absolutely so. We'll have more from Rickwood Field later on. Back to the NBA up next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
It's going to be remembered. It will be a lasting image from the 2024 United States Open, just like Bryson DeChambeau's 55-yard bunker shot.
We love big-time winners. Like, you win a championship, we want to hear from you. You get the stage. Sometimes it's emotional. It's a great watch. You know we also love? The losers who said, you know what? I can't believe I folded down the stretch. Let me face the music here. You sort of get a new light there.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Thursday on the early line on SportsGrid. Yes, it is the NBA offseason, but so much is happening, especially in this next week leading up to the 2024 NBA draft. Round number 1 next Wednesday. Round number 2 in a 2-night event exactly 1 week from today. In big news, as the summer began around the association yesterday. So the coach, JY, James Young, is here once again because, JY, there are some in NBA circles that believe the summer is almost more dramatic and exciting than a regular season or the playoffs that we saw come to a close earlier this week.
Good to be on with you. In typical fashion, we have an NBA champion. We think we're waiting a week, and Detroit decided to say, everyone, hold my beer. And Monty Williams said, hold my money.
Yeah, and he's going to get a lot of that money. The big breaking news yesterday that we brought to you on the show, Monty Williams fired after only a single season in Detroit, just after an offseason of signing a 6-year, $78.5 million deal that made him one of the 5 highest paid coaches in the NBA. So the Detroit Pistons, after finishing in dead last in the NBA once again with a 14-68 record, decide to make this move. JY, when you saw the blockbuster news yesterday, what was your initial reaction?
Honestly, was that a fake Woj account? No, that was the first thing that came to my mind. Is like, wait a minute. They hired Trajan Langdon, the Alaskan assassin, a month ago. He's trying to work with Monty. They wait until 1 week before the draft, and they decide to fire a coach that's got 5 years and $65 million left on his deal. Now, listen, simply put, it was a bad season for them. They were 2-1, and I think they went 63 days without winning a game. 28 games in a row, they lost. So, to me, if you make the move, you make the move as soon as Trajan Langdon got hired. The crazy part is what happened afterwards. It looked like it wasn't Trajan that fired him. It was ownership that went and got Monty Williams. So listen, at the end of the day, Jaden Ivey didn't improve. They had the worst record in the NBA, and they still ended up with the 5th pick. I get it, Ben. I just don't get the timing of it.
How about this, though, Coach? You take a look at the surrounding situation here, because it's not as if you said, we're going to get a first-time head coach here. We're going to pay him lightly. Let's just see how it works out. We'll give him a 3-year deal. You made him, at the time, the highest-paid coach in NBA history, which usually sends a signal to your team. If the players are bad, they're leaving because the coach makes so much money, he's going to be there and outlast some of the superstar players. And at the end of 1 year, he was gone. $65 million into his account. What could have gone wrong in that 1 year where ownership goes, boy, you made so much money and it didn't work out. Let's cut bait right now and still pay you that big deal. What happened here?
Well, I think just the development of some of the players. I mean, listen, Kate Cunningham had a good year. He actually was somewhat healthy. Jaden Ivey, he was coming off the bench. His representatives weren't happy. He maybe didn't take the next step. Jalen Duren looked well. One of the Thompson twins played early in the year. Then his minutes started to get reduced. They trade Bogdanovich. They trade Burks. They go young. It's just, I don't know what their thought process is, except for the fact of, okay, we have 4 young players. We have a top 5 pick. We have salary cap room. We got a new basketball of operations. Let's just clean slate start it over and allow Trajan to pick his coach. The problem is, Donnie, is just why wait a month? Like that's the part that I'm just trying to wrap my head around. Something's going on that we don't know about, some kind of disagreement or something, because it makes no sense to hire Trajan Langdon, have him work with Monty, and then 1 week before the draft, you go ahead and you decide to get rid of him. And then now, if you're another coach coming in there, is this where you want to go? Because they just fired a guy with $65 million left on his deal after 1 year. What's to say they're going to fire someone else in a year? So, interesting times in Detroit.
The 2021 NBA Coach of the Year, that is Monty Williams, who saw his tenure in Phoenix to come to a close last summer after the Suns came up short in the NBA postseason. Then hired by Detroit for that record-setting deal at the time, 6 years, $78.5 million, more than the Lakers were willing to offer Dan Hurley. That's what Monty Williams made last summer with the Detroit Pistons. And yes, it was a dismal year. And there seemed to be some fracture between Monty Williams and trying to bring those young guys along in the Pistons locker room. Something weird has not happened, or something weird has happened, and something did not gel for Detroit. And you have to feel bad for Pistons faithful, because after having the worst record in the NBA for a second consecutive year, they are picking 5th overall again, despite having one of the 3 best chances to have the number 1 overall pick. And maybe this year it's not as big of a deal in an NBA draft that is not considered to be the greatest of all time. But last year, sliding to 5, when Victor Wembanyama was on the table, yeah, things are tough in the Motor City right now for the Pistons. 54 combined wins in the last 3 years and 3 consecutive 5th overall picks to show for it. JY, I'm sure we will have more on the Detroit Pistons in our NBA draft special next week. But some other big news yesterday in the NBA. After being traded for by Indiana midway through this season, leaving Toronto, Pascal Siakam is staying in Indy. 4-year, $189.5 million max contract to remain with the Pacers. They have made him now, alongside Tyrese Halliburton, one of the staples of this franchise. A Pacers team, of course, that was swept in the Eastern Conference Finals, but got to the ECF when that wasn't the expectation. How big is this for Indiana to have that investment into Siakam?
It's continuity, man. It's a team that, they needed him to resign. When you make a big trade like this and you bring a guy over, you can't turn around and just let him walk after the season. Hello, Knicks, I'm talking to you with OG Anunoby. So when you look at the situation, people are going to be like, well, his numbers weren't all that great. Folks, he's used differently. His assist numbers are going to be down because he's not the primary ball handler. Obviously, he's Tyrese Halliburton. He doesn't have to score as much. So to me, it's a great signing for a guy that's really good, a two-way player. And it's just a team that, you're right, Ben, they overachieved last year. So what do they do for an encore, right? Does Halliburton take the next step? Do they play better defense? Can Miles Turner be more consistent on both ends of the floor, right? Does Obi Toppin and TJ McConnell come back? Naismith, they got to play Nembhard. And don't sleep on Benedict Mathurin, who missed the end of the year. I still think they're a piece short, but still, this is a young nucleus, and Pascal Siakam fits the mold for, let's be honest, Ben, one of the more underrated coaches in this generation, and Rick Carlisle.
Yeah, you couldn't let him go. He's certainly going to get a good paycheck there from Indiana, already being on that team, and rightfully so, close to $200 million. If he was to escape the free agency, which we know he isn't now, was there a team that you probably had in mind that could have fit Siakam as opposed to just staying at home in Indiana?
The same, it's Philadelphia. Tobias Harris is gone. I mean, you know that. I mean, that's your favorite player. I mean, Donnie's shedding so many tears when he finds out that Tobias Harris is leaving to go play for the Shanghai Sharks next year. So when you look at that situation, you look at that stretch 4, Siakam. Siakam's off the board now. That looks at someone like OG Anunoby. That's what I'm saying. The Knicks are in a very precarious situation because they have 2 players that someone is going to overpay them and they're going to force their wallets to pay. OG Anunoby is looking at this and saying, if he got a max deal, I'm starting at least at $40 million a year, if not more.
And you know what Donnie and I are trying to do, to act as your agents, to go back to Detroit. Whoever becomes the next head coach, you want a great basketball mind to be on your staff, to be an assistant. That's JY. The Pistons reportedly interested in both James Borrego and J.J. Redick, the 2 guys that have been reportedly in the running for the Lakers job. Did they really want J.J.? Now,
J.J.
Apparently, he's now the front runner somehow, some way. We'll talk about the front runner in the NBA draft. Who's going number 1 overall next?
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Rory Mack, it's going to be remembered. It will be a lasting image from the 2024 United States Open, just like Bryson DeChambeau's 55-yard bunker shot.
We love big-time winners. Like, you win a championship, we want to hear from you. You get the stage. Sometimes it's emotional. It's a great watch. You know we also love? The losers who said, you know what, I just can't believe I folded down the stretch. Let me face the music here. You sort of get a new light there.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Six days away from the start of the 2024 NBA draft, the opening night now of two in the NBA draft this year. That is round number one on Wednesday in Brooklyn. Oh, by the way, somebody should tell you, SportsGrid is going to have an NBA draft special live on Wednesday next week. The coach, James Young, JY, not Donnie. He doesn't like this draft very much. Myself and Kevin Walsh will be live with you for the entirety of the opening night on Wednesday, live on SportsGrid. Picks 1 through 30. JY, it's going to be a fun night.
Oh, it's going to be a great night. And you know what's amazing, Ben? I think we moved markets. I think you and I, we have moved markets with this NBA draft because a couple of us were telling people, I think there's value on the board. Ben, I think that train done left the station.
Yep, and we'll look at the market movement. And just 6 days away from the NBA draft for the number one overall pick, a lot of it following this report from Jonathan Givony of ESPN yesterday, that the Hawks appear to be honing in on Zachary Rizache or Donovan Clingan as their preferred options atop their board, which would mean Alex Sarr, who was the projected number one overall pick, and often throughout this draft process, the odds-on favorite, is starting to slide and maybe slip to number two overall for the Washington Wizards. JY, what do you think has led to the change, either in Atlanta's thinking to favor Rizache over Sarr, or why Sarr has started to slide?
Well, number one, I thought Rizache should have been the number one pick, and I've been telling people for weeks. I just think it lines up. The first domino that I thought was interesting is when they were talking about maybe DeAndre Hunter being moved. And I just thought that Rizache was just a perfect person to slide into that. So now you start looking at maybe it's Clingan. So what does that mean? That means Clint Capella could be on the move. And I think you need to be very careful with Rizache, because I'm going to say this right now. I know there's value for him going 3. If Clingan goes 1, I don't think Washington passes up Rizache at 2, because there's always talk about he was never going to slide past 2. So that means Sarr, who a couple of weeks ago was like a minus 300 favorite to go first, may be looking to go 3 at that point unless the slide continues, which could be interesting for him at 3 going to a place like Houston, because then you get playing with him and Şengün, but then what happens with Jabari Smith? Ben, I think this is going to be the beginning of a crazy week, a lot of moving parts, And trades may happen before the draft to start lining up boards. So to me, the talk of the Hawks have squarely to do that. I think either Hunter and or Clint Capella are getting moved, and those two guys can move into those slots, especially with Clinging, with the fact that Atlanta is very poor defensively at the rim, even though they have Clint Capella. And the fact with Jalen Johnson and DeAndre Hunter, one of them's going to get moved. You move Hunter because he makes more money. Johnson, younger, less money on his contract.
Market movers, Coach. We've seen a lot of those numbers already move, but now we're about a week out here from the NBA draft. Sarr at a plus 115 price. Risa Shea minus 125. Clingan at a plus 430 price. Where will we be next week in your mind? Who is going to be that market mover? You say,
Good
wow,
question.
Clingan plus 430. Does he turn into a negative number here? Do you take a look at Sarr dropping back? Who's that market mover from now till round one, Coach?
I think Risa Shea is going to probably get stronger and stronger in his movement into becoming a number one pick. I just think he is the one with that upside, with that offensive game that I think could translate to the next level, especially if you look at the fact that there could be another trade. Like Atlanta's just such an interesting situation because they're the ultimate middle team, right? They're a middle team that struck gold and they hit the lottery. So now they have to figure out, we just mentioned two scenarios. Well, there's still the third of a Trae Young versus a DeJounte Murray. Who of one of those two gets moved? So I think that is the guy that I'm looking at really as being the movement. I think he keeps moving in that negative direction as the number one pick.
So, JY, let's play it out as such. Zachary Risa Shea goes number one overall to the Atlanta Hawks. Alex Sarr, who was the projected number one overall pick, and as you saw at a point, a very hefty odds-on favorite in minus money to go first overall to Atlanta, does slide. How far does his draft stock fall? Does it stop just at number two overall with the Wizards on the clock?
It all depends on if Clingan or Risa Shea goes first. If Risa Shea goes first, then I think he goes two with three going with Donovan Clingan. I think it's flipped. If Donovan Clingan goes one, I think Risa Shea goes two, Sarr goes three. So it's more about, can you knock down where Atlanta goes? Because I think Atlanta then affects 2 and 3. I think that's the top three. I don't think that moves at all unless you get something wild like a Reed Shepherd at plus 125. But then you have someone like Van Vliet and Jalen Green. Does Jalen Green get moved? So there's so many moving parts, Ben, just not with those top three. But all those teams may have corresponding moves to move someone to slide those guys into that spot.
JY, a lot has been said over the past 24 hours out of a certain agent, Rich Paul, and where he thinks Bronny James should be able to go. Before we get into what team he should actually go to, do you agree with the handling of Bronny James here before the draft, with workouts, with information flowing back and forth? What's your take on this?
I think it's for someone who has flaws in his game. I think it's incredibly smart. I think it's really smart because you don't get those guys in the building, and now you're sitting there saying you kind of don't know. And do you take a chance on LeBron? Now, of course, Rich Paul turned around and said there's no, correlation of LeBron and Bronny playing together. Okay, I'll believe it when I see it. But to me, it's a smart play. It's kind of similar to like what I said with not sending Bronny back to school. The more tape you get on Bronny, it could be bad for him. So better to have a couple of teams that are interested in him and then shut it down and make maybe someone else comes flying up the board to come get him.
JY, his draft position prop is 40.5. The over has the juice. That would be deep into the second round. Quickly here in the final 30 seconds, is Bronny James going to be a first-round pick or later in the second?
I don't know if he'll be a late first-round pick, but I think he goes below pick 40. I would take the under with that. Okay. I think someone's coming to get him at some point, late first round, early second round, somewhere in that 30 to 35 range.
The Lakers have 2 picks right now on the board, 17th overall and 55th overall. More with the coach up next.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
There is going to be an energy to game time decisions that you will feel night in and night out. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. I want this to be the place that people come to. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than game time decisions. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Rory Mack, it's going to be remembered. It will be a lasting image from the 2024 United States Open, just like Bryson DeChambeau's 55-yard bunker shot.
We love big-time winners. Like, you win a championship, we want to hear from you. You get the stage. Sometimes it's emotional. It's a great watch. We know we also love the losers who said, you know what, I just can't believe I folded down the stretch. Let me face the music here. You sort of get a new light there.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Around the WNBA now with Coach James Young live right here on this Thursday on the Early Line on SportsGrid. A triple header of action on the hardwood to look at in the W. But, of course, JY, we start with some rather devastating news in the WNBA. The number 2 overall pick in the 2024 WNBA draft, one of the most talented rookies in the sport at this moment, the Sparks' Cameron Brink, suffered an injury earlier this week that yesterday was revealed to be a torn ACL, more than likely ending her rookie campaign rather early. And Brink was on the U.S. women's basketball 3-on-3 team for the Olympics starting in Paris late next month as well. Just how disappointing, JY, is this situation and the news for Cameron Brink?
It's devastating. And as a coach that's coached women's basketball, Ben, as soon as I saw her go down, I knew that was an ACL. I've seen that far, far too often for Cameron Brink. But let's be honest, it struggled a little bit early on, but started to come on, had one of her better games in that 87-74 loss versus Atlanta, the game before she got hurt, getting 16-7. Now, she was getting herself into foul trouble. She wasn't playing a ton of minutes, but I felt like she was slowly turning the corner. Her and Darica Hamby were starting to become a pretty formidable 4-5 combo. So this is a tough situation for a kid that's going to be out now. And then obviously, you know, she was going to be on that 3-on-3 team. So with Haley Van Lith, which would be interesting, you know, so we'll see what they do in regards to who becomes a replacement. Obviously, Jen Rosati, the old coach, old player at UConn, old coach at GW. Tammy Reese, head coach at URI, is the assistant for the 3-on-3 team. We'll see what happens, but devastating injury for Cameron Brink and the LA Sparks.
JY, turning the corner. Also, we can use that for the Aces, who picked up a victory last night, 94-83 as a 6.5-point favorite over what was the 9-5 Storm. We saw that emotional press conference a few days ago with Asia Wilson saying, you know what, basically put this on me. I love this game. We're going to do this. 27-9-4, the catalyst there. They get their point guard back. Let's take a look at the Aces now moving forward, Coach.
Well, they got their point guard back, and they got their emotional leader, and they got their floor general on both sides of the floor. Now, listen, she came off the bench. She only played 16 minutes. She only had 1 point, but she had 7 assists and 4 rebounds, so she's at least dishing the rock and getting them going. So, to me, this is a big for them for a team that's really hasn't played up to expectations. I talked about missing her and, obviously, Candace Parker. Let's see how they crank up what's going on there. But to me, listen, at the end of the day, when Asia Wilson and Jackie Young combined to score 59 points to shoot a combined 22 out of 37 from the floor, it don't matter. I could be the point guard. You're going to win a lot of games when those two go off like that.
But it is because of the return of Chelsea Gray and the orchestration of the offense that allows Jackie Young, who had to kind of take over the point guard duties, to play more off ball. She leads the team last night with 32, and Asia Wilson continues to do Asia Wilson things, 27 points, 9 boards. JY, the Aces right now a co-favorite to win the WNBA championship alongside the New York Liberty. Both teams booked with a plus 165 price. The Aces had been struggling. Now a game above 500 again at 7-6. Is your overall outlook for Las Vegas as a true title contender in the running for 3 in a row still the same?
Yes, I think if Chelsea can stay healthy and get her win back and work her minutes up, they're the best team, because I see every time that Brianna Stewart goes against, obviously, the Vegas Aces, she tends to struggle. That's why you're looking at someone like Jonquel Jones, who always puts up big numbers. That's why you want to take Jonquel versus a team like the Aces. So to me, they are still the best team. They're the 2-time defending champions. You got to knock them off. And this is what interesting is what I wonder what happens is this. As Chelsea starts to play and she plays well, does that affect Asia Wilson's MVP odds if they start winning games like crazy? Do people start to correlate the turnaround in the season is Chelsea Gray being back in the lineup?
Asia Wilson minus 220 right now to win the WNBA MVP award. It will be her second in the last 3 seasons. Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and the Indiana Fever have now won 3 straight games. JY, what has Indiana figured out?
Run that pick and roll. It's very simply put. As Aaliyah Boston is able to score inside, it opens up Mitchell Smith and Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark doesn't have to take the brunt of the scoring. You let the game come to her. Then they're starting to play better. Huge road trip starting tomorrow that the Indiana Fever have.
The Fever have won 5 of its last 7 games. JY, a fadeaway to the break in hour number 3. Up next, live right here on the Early Line.